went to my uncle. He was a big, I believe, Republican was in, and my uncle, he was a big Republican. He was in charge of the Republican Party in Lauderdale County, and I said, well, if you'll let me be in the rural care business, I'll vote Republican. So I did, and I got the job, and I kept it for 35 years. And of course, I retired, and been retired 20-something years, and still very thankful to the Lord that I'm still living and doing pretty well. So, and I tell people, of course, they say I'm lying, but I said, well, I carried it for 35 years for 100 and something mile a day at the last, and I'm the only mail carrier that never did put a letter in the wrong box. They said, you're a good liar, so I guess that was true. But anyway, that was my situation, and I've been retired and enjoyed different places and went all over the country. And I got a son that works down that counts the paper mill, and a daughter that works for hospice. And I got another daughter that she works at a nursing home. And then I got a son that's been with the FBI for 29 to 30 years. And he's been over to, he was in, went to Greece and stayed 5 years. Then he went to Iraq. And the second day he was there, they blowed up a hotel next to him. He went over there, and he saw body parts all over the place. And when he finally came back, he had that whatever kind of syndrome it is. It really bothered him, but he's doing okay. He lives in Huntsville. But anyway, I retired before too long, get another job. But anyway, that's about the whole 9 yard. I'm married, and my wife's doing pretty good. She's at home, and that's about all I know. Of course, I had a brother. It was like I told Ricky that he was a big whiskey man. He was G.W. Dowdy, and he married a gal he married two from Tennessee, and of course, we go to Savannah and down in there, we enjoy that. A lot of my people came from around Lutz, Tennessee. They was mowers. On the mowers, my mother's side, they were mowers, and they were big during the Civil War. They were for the Yankees, and of course, we wound up. Daddy and him were big. And my grandpa, I remember he was there. He remembered the Civil War, and he tell tales about the Civil War, what happened in the Civil War when he was a little boy. And they had an old dog that the Yankees came up on horses, and the Yankees had come and just take everything they could get out of the house, and I mean, the food and everything, they told me. And they had an old dog that they could stick him on a chicken, and he'd get it. Well, anyway, they came up, and there's an old hen went on the floor. Back then, they didn't have no solid, it's just had rocks for the foundation. Anyway, he went on the floor and brought the old hen out, and they got the hen, the Yankees did, and after they left with that chicken and different things, they killed that old dog. I've heard my grandpa say that. And back then they would take their meat and hide it in the woods to keep them Yankees from getting it. And there's an old man. He was a Murphy. That was some of my kinfolks. He would walk everywhere. And Yankees had a camp up here between here and Rhodesville, between here and Florence. They had a big camp up there. And he went by there, and he walked everywhere, and they was fixing to eat dinner, and they told him, said, come on in and eat with us, because he's a big talker. So he went in and ate with them, and he told them when he left, he said, now, when y'all come to my house, y'all welcome to come and eat with me. And they gave him a mule or a horse to ride on. They tell me back that years ago. But I had different kinfolks that was outlaws, and I had one great uncle. He was a mower, and I got a letter that they got him for being a spy for the Yankees, and they took him over to Tuscumbia, and they put him in prison, and they was going to shoot him. And he wrote his wife a letter, and we've got the letter, and it's on the record down here in the library, I think. And he is told his wife says, "Don't bring another man in here. They're fixing to kill me, but I'm not guilty of that." But anyway, they shot him, and he is buried, I believe, at the Suesmore graveyard down toward Luce, Tennessee. And my great uncle or great grandpa or something, I think he's buried down there. So anyway, I'm still here and doing fine, and that's about all I know about me, and I'm hoping to live quite a while longer, so you never know. But anyway, that's it.
My name is Maddie Beatrice Melton White. I was born at Wright, Alabama, reared at Gravelly Springs, went all my 12 years at Waterloo High School, and then at the college in Florence. My grandfather, Henry Jack Melton, homesteaded the Melton holler at Wright's. It was rumored that, well, they say that it's the truth, that a man by the name of Mr. Waters, when the boats came and shelled Waterloo in the Civil War, that he rode his horse down to the banks and shot at the boats with his shotgun. But they shelled the town of Waterloo, and everybody headed for the hills. But anyway, Waterloo is a great place to live. My first husband and second husband, my mother and dad, and my in-laws are buried on the cemetery, at the cemetery on Richardson's at Waterloo. And with God's grace, I will be buried there too. But Waterloo is a clean town. It's got honest people. We're all like neighbors. We're just family here. And most of the people are from the old families. I have my grandfather Melton's and my grandfather Murphy's ledgers, where they tell about all the people that they knew in that time. My grandfather Melton had this farm at Wright's, and he had the wooden fence all around it, because it was made of chestnut trees, because something happened to the chestnut trees that they all died during that time. We used to be blessed with a lot of chestnut trees, but the last time I was in the Melton Holler, there was a few chestnut trees growing there. My father and mother owned several hundred acres at Gravelly Springs. My dad was a cattle farmer, and I have 3 brothers and 1 sister. One brother went on to join the Army and made a career of it. he worked with the he worked with the oh shoot, he worked with the space shuttles. And then my oldest brother, he worked for Bendix Corporation, and he retired there. My middle brother, he worked in Indiana, and he was at Grace Christian College. You see, most everybody that went to Waterloo High School, if they wanted to, they became whatever they wanted to be. Our school was, it's small, but it's very, very good school. I am very proud to say that I graduated from there. But the Indians, this is where they had to catch the boats. And on Natchez Trace, Mr. Henderson built a wall of rocks because his grandmother went there to live with his grandfather. So she escaped from the boats, and that is a very well-known section up there. Mr. Henderson died this year. He was very proud of his Indian heritage, and as we are all proud of our heritage here in Waterloo, I thank you.
Hello, yes, my name is Linda McFall. I am originally from Hardin County, Tennessee. I've lived here almost 54 years with my husband, Billy Joe McFall, who is a native from Second Creek, County Road 1. He graduated from Waterloo High School, as did all three of our children. Graduated from Waterloo, and they all went to UNA to college, as I did. And we have 5 grandchildren that live in this area. 2 of them are living away from home, working and going to school. The McFall family has a long history of being in this area. As I retired from my teaching position, I was asked to volunteer at the museum, which I did. I've been volunteering there for about 7 years. I'm the secretary of the board. The museum is a very intriguing place, and it's a real asset to Waterloo. It was created actually by Mr. Ezra Culver to honor his wife, Edith Newman Culver. This was her childhood home, and he renovated it and presented the museum to the city of Waterloo to be used to perpetuate the history of Waterloo and to honor his wife's family, the Newmans. The museum was built by Hiram Richardson. He was a gentleman that came here from around Pulaski, Tennessee. He was a carpenter. He also built the hotel. It was called the hotel at the time, the Haygood House that's across the street from the museum. And he also built the Methodist Church, which is, I think, the oldest continuous organization of the Methodist Church here in Waterloo. It's behind the museum on Pea Ridge Road. Miss Edith, her grandparents, her father came here he was a Yankee soldier, and after the war, he came back and he floated a sawmill down the river, he and a friend, and then he roomed at a rooming house that belonged to Miss Sarah Long's family, and he met and fell in love with Sarah. They were married, and they raised their children there at the home place. And in later years, as I said, Mr. Ezra Culver, who was a very well-known Waterloo native, he had only a 4th grade education, but he was a very industrious young man. When he was 14, he had his own sawmill, and the rail line came from Walnut Grove to Waterloo, and they brought cross ties down and put on the river boats, because at the time, 1873, the Tennessee River did not go, it was not travelable by boat all the way through, and it more or less stopped in Waterloo because of the rocky shoals. And at that time, Waterloo was bigger than Florence, Tuscumbia, Muscle Shoals, and Sheffield all. And there was 4 doctors and numerous people that lived here. And as I said, the boat stopped in Waterloo. That's where all river traffic stopped. But in 1937, TVA built the dam at Pickwick, and they took farmland on Second Creek and made the lake, Pickwick Lake, and then they dredged and made river passage all the way to Florence and on that way. So that pretty much took care of the population of Waterloo. But we still have a great history here. It's one of the most beautiful places that you can come and visit or live. My husband and I, we volunteer both at the museum. He's the treasurer and I'm the secretary. And we help to host one of the largest, it is the largest tourism event in the state of Alabama, which is the Trail of Tears Memorial Ride that comes here, commemorative ride. So we help with that, and we help where we go to church. And this is a small community, but a well-connected people with, we all know each other, we help each other, we love each other. We volunteer here at the Senior Center, and it's a wonderful place to gather. And a lot of history, a lot of families have been here through the years. And as I said, I'm not a native here exactly, but I feel like I am since I've been here most of my life. Thank you. Hello, I'm Linda McFall. I'm on the board of directors here at the Edith Newman Culver Museum, where my husband and I both volunteer. I'll tell you a little bit about the museum and some of the history behind the Culver family, because this was Mrs. Edith Newman Culver's home place. But going back a few years, Waterloo was founded in 1819 and incorporated in 1832. This was before Alabama became a state, and it is the second oldest town in Alabama. The oldest town is Mooresville near Huntsville. In 1850, there were 453 permanent residents, 4 doctors, 2 hotels, and numerous boarding houses. In 1850, Waterloo was bigger than Florence, Muscle Shoals, Tuscumbia, and Sheffield combined. May be hard to believe, but the river stopped here in Waterloo because of the rocky shoals at that time. The Newman House was built in 1872 by Mr. Hiram Richardson. He built the Methodist Church, which is located behind the museum, and he also built the Waterloo Hotel, now known as the Haygood House, and it's directly across the street. The second owner was Mr. Joseph Newman. He was a Union soldier from Ohio and stationed here during the Civil War. Joseph really liked this area, and he returned here following the war. He and 2 other young men floated a sawmill down the river and went into the sawmill business. Joseph boarded in the home of Daniel Long, and he fell in love with their youngest daughter, Sarah. After their marriage, they purchased this home in 1918 and lived here for many years. Mr. Joseph Newman, whose portrait is in an 8x10 frame here in the parlor on the right of the mantel, was the grandfather of Edith Newman Culver. She was married to Mr. Ezra Culver, who renovated her childhood home, and in 1995 presented it to the city of Waterloo to be used as a museum. Mr. Culver was very poor as a child. He dug ditches as a young man, and he was industrious in the sawmill business. In later years, Mr. Culver developed a process of sprayed-on concrete and named it Gunite, and he founded Gunite Construction Company. Mr. Culver worked on many famous structures and buildings all over the world. Some noted ones include Yankee Stadium, the Brooklyn Bridge, the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York, and the bridges in the Florida Keys. He employed many, many people, family and neighbors here from Waterloo. Now, here in the parlor, there's Miss Edith Newman Culver. Her portrait is over the piano. And I want to tell you about this piano. It has a long history that when I do tours with people, we get oohs and ahs. This piano was built in New Orleans for the Kernahan family, who lived on a plantation at the bend of the river. Mr. Kernahan was a wealthy Irishman. The piano was being shipped by flatboat up the Mississippi River when the boat sank, piano and all. There goes the ooze. But the piano was retrieved from the murky depths and returned to New Orleans to be refurbished. Eventually, it found its way back home to the Kernahan plantation. In later years, it was donated to this museum by descendants of the Kernahan family. Okay, in the dining room, there's items that belong to Mr. and Ms. Culver. The china on the top shelf of the china cabinet belonged to Mrs. Eunice, Mrs. Culver's mother. The Wedgwood china with the cornflower design belonged to Mrs. Edith Culver. Okay, in the kitchen, there's some couple of interesting items that you may see shortly. The wooden washing machine was invented in 1877. There is a cork hole on the right side of the tub to release the water. This machine is considered to be one of the first washing machines in this area. The large jug came from the old Boatman distillery, which was operated here in Waterloo during the steamboat days. The Boatman family operated it and sharecropped with the government. The government got 2/3 of the production. There's an antique bottle collection. It was donated to the museum by Mr. James Hamilton from this area. They are of the 1820s era. There's a barrel from the early 1900s from Threet and Young's store here in Waterloo. Goods were shipped in this barrel. If you look, you can see the name on the side of the barrel. It was found in a barn on Bumpus Creek. We also have another interesting thing here on the property at the museum, and it's the carriage house. There are several carriages. This was some of Mr. Culver's hobbies that he collected. There was his last car that he had. It's there. And just a wooden horse there that's a huge life-size replica of a horse that Mr. Spiegel carved this, Mr. Spiegel. And when he first made this, the museum called the school here at Waterloo and asked for the students that were interested to name the horse. So he was named, let's see if I can remember, Thunderhoof. This was a child in the first grade, and it's the T and the C is Mr. T.C. Spiegel. So the horse is named Thunderhoof. I believe it's T.H. Spiegel. So that's another interesting thing that people enjoy when they come to the museum. Thank you. Okay, this is an antique butter churn here at the museum. And there's a lot of times the bottom of the churn gets broke because kids start playing with it and then wipes it out then.
Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He hath loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on.
Okay, this is the Vietnam era uniform and helmet that belonged to Thomas Duncan Ray here from Waterloo, one of our citizens. He's a great American. He went through the Vietnam War. He was a commissioned officer. He graduated from UNA in the ROTC program. And he's a friend to all of us here in Waterloo, Mr. Thomas Duncan Ray.
I have seen him in the watchfires of 100 circling camps. They have builded him an altar in the evening dews and damp. I can read his righteous sentence by the dim and flaring lamp. His day is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His day is marching on. In the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea, with a glory in his bosom that transfigured you and me, as he died to make